The incessant chirping of crickets was the only sound that dared to break the silence of the night. High up in the mountains, nestled between towering trees, a cabin stood bathed in the silver glow of the full moon. Her father had insisted it would do her good to get away from the city, to reconnect with nature after her mother's passing. "Hey, Em, what's wrong? You said you needed some alone time, not that you wanted me to come over at midnight." His usual playful tone was laced with concern. But Emily couldn't shake off the feeling that she was being watched. Every creak of the old cabin, every rustle of leaves outside her window sent shivers down her spine. And now, unable to bear the suffocating loneliness any longer, she had reached out to her best friend Liam. "Just promise me you won't be alone." Inside, 23-year-old Emily lay in her bed, her eyes wide open, staring at the darkness of her bedroom ceiling. But as soon as Liam suggested she should try to sleep, their conversation took a darker turn. Sleep seemed like a distant memory for her. It had been a week since she'd moved into this secluded cabin. On the other end of the line, Liam's sleepy voice crackled through the phone. "I'm sorry, Liam. It's just..." Emily's voice trembled slightly. "I feel like something or someone is in this cabin with me. I don't know." When it didn't, she threw it back on the bed and tried to make herself believe her friend was right. She got up from bed, walked to the window, and pulled back the curtains. The moon hung heavy in the sky, casting long, distorted shadows from the trees onto the ground below. The forest, usually a comforting sight, now looked menacing, like a dark, looming monster ready to pounce. As she stepped outside, the morning air was crisp and cool on her skin, and the sight of the rising sun gave her a sense of hope. On the porch railing, she saw a single white feather, and it wasn't just any feather. She quickly brushed the image of the bird from her mind, convinced it was nothing more than her grief playing tricks on her. Still, she couldn't shake off the feeling that she was being watched. It was as if someone or something were observing her from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. It was from a bird that didn't live around here, a bird she had never seen before. As she packed her things, she felt a mixture of relief and terror. Just as she was about to step out, she heard a noise that made her freeze. It was a knock, slow and deliberate, coming from inside the cabin. The knocking continued, growing louder, more insistent, and with each sound, Emily felt her terror grow. Was it a bear? A mountain lion? What was out there? Relief that she would soon be away from this nightmare, but terror at what she would face once she left the only home she'd ever known. She started seeing things out of the corner of her eye, hearing whispers when no one was around. The cabin, once a place of solace for her and her mother, had become a prison of fear. Taking a deep breath, she told herself that it was just a branch scraping against the wall, the wind playing tricks on her already frayed nerves. But as another knock sounded, this time louder, more insistent, she knew that whatever was in that cabin with her had finally decided to reveal itself. One day, Emily would find a single white feather on her pillow. The next day, a whole cluster of them would be gathered at the foot of her bed. She tried to convince herself that they were simply blown in by the wind or left behind by a bird that had nested in the eaves. But a small voice at the back of her mind kept whispering, "They're watching you." The tall trees that had offered shade and comfort now loomed over her like gnarled fingers reaching into the sky. The whispering wind carried with it voices that she couldn't quite make out, but she could feel their accusing stares upon her back. It was long, narrow, pointed at both ends, like an arrow. And it was then that she remembered her grandmother's stories about angels and demons using feathers to send messages to mortals. Perhaps Liam was right. She was letting her imagination run wild. Maybe there was no one else in the cabin with her. She was just letting her imagination run wild. In her dreams, she'd see her mother, not as she remembered her, but as she'd been in those final moments, weak and fading, yet reaching out to Emily with a desperate plea in her eyes. A beat of silence followed. The fear was still there, lurking in the corners of her mind, but the arrival of daylight brought with it a sense of security. Maybe she had been foolish to call Liam in the middle of the night. He must have thought she was crazy. But as the first rays of sunlight streamed through her window, she forced herself to get up.
Ow.
Then Liam spoke, his voice now serious. "Don't be ridiculous. There's no one here but us. Your dad's out fishing, and you're all alone. You're just letting your imagination run wild." But sleep was a distant dream now. She tossed and turned, her heart pounding in her chest. her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother standing at the foot of her bed, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes wide and pleading. Then, just as quickly, the vision would disappear, and Emily would find herself back in the suffocating darkness of her room. "Come on, Em, you're stronger than this." He was right, Emily knew. It was just the grief, the shock of losing her mother so suddenly. She missed her terribly. They'd been so close, sharing secrets, dreams, fears. Now those secrets were buried with her, along with the woman who had been Emily's anchor in the storm. "Okay," Emily whispered, trying to convince herself more than Liam. "You're right. Sorry to bother you. Hey, you know where I live? You know I'll always come if you need me, even in the middle of the night." "Thank you, Liam, I promise," she said, though the promise felt hollow even to her own ears. They chatted for a few minutes, talking about random things, anything to distract Emily from the growing dread in her heart. "If you hear anything at all, call me back, okay?" "Okay," she whispered again, her grip on the phone tightening. "Don't let your imagination," he started, but she cut him off. "I won't," she said, her voice shaking. "Love you," Liam said softly, and then the line went dead. Emily stared at the phone as if expecting it to materialize into Liam and pull her out of the terrifying situation she found herself in. But as the minutes ticked by and the silence of the cabin pressed in on her, she began to doubt Liam's reassurances. She hurried back to bed, burying herself under the covers. As dawn began to break, painting the sky in hues of gray and purple, Emily felt a surge of relief. She needed to get out of the cabin, go for a walk, clear her head. But as she turned to go back inside, she noticed something that made her freeze. Emily shuddered. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's unease grew. Sleep offered no escape. Night after night she was plagued by nightmares, each one more vivid and terrifying than the last. Then there were the feathers. They started appearing everywhere, seemingly out of nowhere. Determined to put an end to her torment, Emily decided to leave the cabin. With her bag slung over her shoulder, she walked towards the door, her hand hovering over the doorknob. She whirled around, her eyes wide with terror, but she saw no one. The cabin was empty. It had to be, right? Slowly she backed away from the door, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of movement, any indication of what was out there on the other side. As she watched in horror, the doorknob began to turn and she could feel the evil presence in the room with her, coiling around her like a serpent, waiting to strike.